Basically, I just make work to see if I could pull something off. Like, they're all ideas that I'm not sure if I could make happen or not. Just seeing what's possible. And when I was little, I think it was the same. I think that's never changed. And once I get to the point where I know, then I stop. And so I always have unfinished artwork laying around the studio, and then I'll have a show, and it'll be a crazy deadline and me running around doing that part, packaging them all up and tying off all the loose ends and painting the flies. I like to make art, but I hate art stores. I hate paints. I hate canvases leaning against the wall, you know? And so I don't know if this is the best backdrop for me. This is where I work. This is my job. But my job is only where I document my life. Life is really what it's all about. I would much rather share my life.
We're at Prospect Park, doing a little fishing in Brooklyn. Always snagging in here. Wow, that's solid. I don't think I'm getting that back. That could have been a log or a dead guy. It seems weird to fish in a spot like this that's kind of man-made and not, seems like it's not in nature, but I kind of was always fishing that way, in irrigation ditches, and I was always catching trash. I would be fishing and there would be crop dusters flying above, dropping pesticides on my head. Right where I grew up, in Winterhaven, California, was right where the Colorado River crossed into Mexico. So a lot of those irrigation ditches are runoff from the Colorado River, so there are all kinds of creatures in them. Catfish, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, striped bass. And so I just grew up fishing. You know, I used to go several times a week, sometimes every day.
There was a sign that's always down there near this underpass that has the population. And that sign, I feel like, has been the same for years. I don't know. I left. I should be -1.
I always wanted to get out of there. And now I spend all my time wishing I was back there. I'm not the same person I was when I grew up. You know, I'm making the art I'm making about that place through different eyes now. I'm perfectly aware of that. But, you know, this is who I am, you know? I'm someone who's been living in New York for 10 years. Grew up in an entirely different place. Home has a lot to do with where you sort of come of age and you sort of form who you are. This never feels like home to me. I always feel like I'm somewhere. I'm somewhere I like. I like New York. But it doesn't feel warm and home-like to me. There's a lot of people that come from the city who make art about that, about their experience in the city. And here I am now. I've been living in the city for just about 10 years. And, you know, I could just either be another person making art about my experience here in the city, or I could try to be one lonely voice, you know, speaking for the people that aren't being heard, you know? There's no one speaking for people down there. It's weird because they're cartoons, but I don't want to make the subject matter cartoony at all. I think that's just sort of my language. And we're casting straight into the wind. Maybe we should keep on going. That little section looks good. There was no art really for me growing up. It was always somebody else's. It was like art about some other life, you know? Some other person living some other place.
And then I ended up going to Art Center, which was a great school and really pushed me a lot. And I had classes like a contemporary art history class, which blew my mind and made me reconsider just doing illustration. And so that's what pushed me to come to New York and try to just be an artist.
You know, I can't remember when I first saw his work, but I curated a show with Alethea Weingarten and Matt Goldman and in the Lower East Side. And he did all these little tiny airplanes that were on these strings, and he had them installed in this space in a really bizarre way, and they were incredible. I mean, I knew right away something was going on. something I hadn't seen before. I really was drawn to his work immediately, and he's one of my favorite artists. He's incredible. The content is just such mundane, ordinary things that he's going for, but he does it in such a unique way, and his color palette, his line quality, I still don't really understand the way he uses colors. It's still surprising to me.
For a long time, I used to just hate art stores and going to art stores, so I would pick all my art supplies from things I could find in hardware stores and stationery stores. Weird pink and yellow and light blue. They're sort of baby colors. You know, they were all the primary colors, but there was the baby version for some reason. That's what you could get. And then for a while, it just got too difficult, and I started finding art that I had made before that started to fall apart over time. So I started to use paint more, but I was still trying to mix those same colors from stationery stores. There was something weird about it that was speaking to me, and I think I've been able to sort of expand that. So they still are influenced by that time when I was just picking stuff from stationery stores.
The plants are one of my favorite things that he's done. Just such a simple idea, but done so beautifully, and every inch of the thing is just cartoon perfection.
All this stuff kind of tells stories like about the person who owns it. Like plants are great because they really are a portrait of the person who owns them and who cares for them. For instance, right here I'm painting a cactus that's been planted in a cardboard box. And I think I kind of like that idea, like whoever planted this plant is not really considering the longevity of the pot that this cactus is in. So this thing is eventually going to fall apart, and who knows what's going to happen to this cactus at some point. I mean, I thought if I just drew, I could have a job in a posh like office, you know, with a plant. I have a plant next to me, and I don't know, sipping on a coffee or something. So I started off doing illustration, thinking if I could just make a living making art, that it would be the best. Like both of my parents did construction, and so I was happy to do art because it just meant that I wouldn't be doing construction, you know. And then you see me doing that show at the Hole, and it's like me doing construction. Like I'm lugging around lumber, I'm cutting it, you know what I mean? I got sawdust in my pockets right now, you know? So I haven't really like moved that far away from construction, really.
We had a million different setbacks. We barely got this all figured out, and then we had only 1 month until the show was supposed to open, and our show got canceled, and so we were left with less than a month and no exhibition. So I just thought up this idea of doing a show that was unfinished. I thought up the show because of Taylor. I didn't think, oh, we should just have unfinished paintings. The idea started with Taylor.
She wanted to make her show look unfinished. It's based on an installation I did at the Watari Museum in Tokyo, where I had a wall that was sort of demolished. And she had seen images of that, and she wanted me to come in and do a similar treatment in there. I think the first time Kathy told me about the idea, I was sort of, my first beat was to think about that being as sort of a really strange idea. And then immediately I just realized it would be really great because I think a lot of people are really interested in that, you know, the viewer. And it's normally the thing that artists try to hide. That's Megan. She's also the partner in here, her and Kathy.
The whole came about because Kathy Grayson and I both worked at Deitch Projects. In January, Jeffrey Deitch, our boss, decided to leave to go to the MoCA. So Kathy Grayson and I, over the next 6 months, figured out, we're both obviously trying to figure out what we were going to do, and after many ups and downs and being pulled apart in certain ways to figure out what the rest of our lives were going to become, decided to start the Whole together. Within 2 months, we pulled together a gallery and our first show, and that's how Taylor came to be involved with us for our not quite open for business show. His whole installation really pulled everything together and made it a special way to start the space, I thought.
I think I just got excited about it. Any other scenario, I might have made a few things for it and just
gone on to something else. But this was kind of exciting, and I'm really glad I did it. Still exciting. Eric's probably a good person to talk to.
Do you want to be like a fly-by-night art star, or do you want to like have a consistent long-term career that lasts your whole life? Ultimately, you want your work to be in a museum for people to study and be a part of history. Like the idea of being in like books and history books and all that, that's the most important thing, because we all do it for the love. What other reason would we put everything else on the line but to do it for the love, you know? And Taylor's definitely one of those dudes.
Instead of just having like a painting that has a certain style to it, Taylor's worldview permeates all of his art, so it's not just a drawing, it's the whole world around him. And it's a very distinctive vision, which is the sign of a really talented artist. He has this extra special dedication. It's not that he's a perfectionist in a fussy way, it's more that the flow of ideas he has never stops. And so when the painting is nearing done is when he adds some of the most clever, visually interesting details. It's very hard for him to finish a painting because as it nears completion, he comes up with even more ideas to add to it.
I can't believe we made it all the way through and actually we're finished. But of course, we were finished, but Taylor still wanted to come in and work again. So he was even working throughout the opening, which I thought was kind of appropriate.
That's a fun place to see him at his openings because he usually hasn't slept in 4 days. And he's just kind of smiling and a little bit spaced out. But he's still, and then he sleeps for 2 days.
One of the main things about Taylor's work to me is that a lot of people's stuff looks derivative or like similar to someone else's style, but Taylor's, I can't place where he would have started doing what he's doing. It's like just really original. The guy looked nice before, but it actually looks better after he put his hand on it. It's insane. He takes a dirty New York apartment and makes it look like you'd want to live in it. Like, I'd eat those Fruit Loops off the floor.
That was a really cool thing, being able to just install work in that really kind of crazy way. Just the fact that they even thought to do a show like that, I think, speaks a lot about them. You know, it's a pretty fun way to start up a gallery. I'm really into the idea of honesty with your art, and it's weird because there's a lot of things that I fake technically. You know, there's a lot of this dripping that I'm actually just trying to get a bunch of drips, and that seems innately dishonest, but it's a really honest thing that I love those drips, and if they're not happening, I want them so bad that I'm doing whatever I can do to get them, and I feel like that's where the honesty comes in. But the other way I think honesty plays in is if you make a mistake, if you do something and it turns out a little weird, that's just how it turned out, because that's how all the cards fell down, you know? That's honest, and I like that. For the most part, I just let this stuff roll, see what happens, and let it do its thing. And Gravity's a better artist than I am.
Most artists, I think it's like a burning urge, like you can't not do it. He could be like a toy designer, or he could be a comic book artist, or he could do lots of different things, but I think he has lots more terrain to explore in his work, that he has just scratched the surface of applying his worldview and his art style to his environment.
I'm sure he'll have a museum show in the next few years and just see what he would do with the gigantic space, or see what kind of installation he would do if he really had the time and the resources and assistance to help him do something like that. He could do something really incredible.
I would much rather make art that's a forum for other people's ideas. I really don't like art that's really about something. Oh. You know? That's ridiculous. This is what my art's about. That right there. That's what life is like, you know? Just like that. You think you're gonna come out here, do a bunch of casts, catch a bunch of fish. It turns out you come out here and you throw it into the weeds a bunch of times. You get some knots in your line like this. Maybe you catch a fish. Maybe you just get a bite. Maybe you don't get anything. That's some reality for you.